Hi, I'm Carolin, and with the ppl.Kickstarter, I help startups, scale-ups, and SMEs in tech to manage people well, to craft company culture intentionally, and to maximize impact with compelling communications along both. Because with the power of these three, you pull your team together long-term and are able to build a long-lasting, successful company. In today's episode, we're going to hear from Daniel Abebe from HuggyStudio. And we're going to talk about company culture, specifically how to craft company culture and then how to manage it and keep it alive. And what we're also going to share is very useful tips, hands-on insights, actionable stuff that you really can do something with. Because Daniel, you are here with me at Video House sharing your story. And it's quite a story that left an impression on me. You shared it on LinkedIn. That's how we found each other. And I'm very, very curious to hear more about it and to dive deeper into it because you shared it so beautifully too. So first of all, to be on point, what's HuggyStudio doing? Mm-hmm. Maybe you can share a bit about that and then kind of make the
transition.
Yes. Make the transition. Yes.
Sure. I'd be happy to do it. So first, thanks for having me. It's really nice to be here. And I kind of forgot that we actually met on LinkedIn.
We did.
Yeah. I was like, where did I know you from already? And actually, it was LinkedIn, and that's the power of the network.
Yeah.
So basically, before saying about HuggyStudio or explaining anything about what we do as a company, I think it's very important to understand like where I'm coming from, mm-hmm. because that's going to be something that you're going to feel all over the discussion again and again, which is I started like my first job, or like official job, was at a bank. You know, I used to work at a bank. I'll not say any name, but let's say it's a bank that got acquired by another large bank.
Okay.
And at that bank, what I had as an experience as an employee was that every single day when we would go out for a lunch with my colleagues, people would just complain. They would just complain. Mm-hmm. And that was my first job. So I thought that's how it works. If you work until 12, then you go out, you complain, you get back and you work again until like 5:36. So basically after that, I decided to start my own business. And I thought I just need to build something and everybody would just like run to this product, right? So I left the bank and I decided to, take some money from my brother, take my money, take some money I didn't have. So I took a loan and I invested the entire amount into building a product with an agency. Like the agency was great, but at the end of the day, the product wasn't, right? Mm-hmm. So people didn't want to use that product because I didn't test it before. And at the end of the day, I had like a product that nobody wanted, no job, and a debt, right? Mm-hmm. And quite a significant amount of debt, right? So after that, I had to work for other companies and learn, okay, how can I become a better entrepreneur? So I've been doing that for years after that. And that's when everything comes together with HuggyStudio, because we're a company that helps non-technical founders like I used to be to test business ideas for let's say, very small amount of time or money with no code platforms, which are basically platforms that help you create digital products without hiring developers, without raising money from investors, without taking debts. And that's what we're trying to do with HuggyStudio. So basically that's like how we come back to this point of helping me when I was 20 years old with the tools that you have today in 2023.
Yeah. That's actually something I could have used in 2019 when I started 42.
Many people do that. Like many people still have these old assumptions that you need developers, you need investors, and you need to do it the right way. So people will always say that, I would like to do it the right way. Mm-hmm. And then at the end of the day, they just spend way too much money or they just don't do it because they feel like, no, I cannot do it. I don't have the resources. But you can do it on the side. You can do it in the evenings. You can do it yourself. Those are like the main things that you want to transmit with the company HuggyStudio.
Very true. And then at some point, I remember that's how I found you actually. You had this kind of podcast where you shared your story about or the journey with HuggyStudio when you realized that besides that like offering you have, there is much more to building a company when it comes to hiring people, managing people, and building that culture around everything. So I'm really curious how you realize that and how both comes together. And I remember it was, wasn't it about you going out of the office for a while or something, and you had to pin down how everything works, or can you just walk us through it?
Yeah, there were many like events that happened throughout the years, not only at HuggyStudio, but also within the other companies. Exactly. But at HuggyStudio, like there are some milestones I can take you through. So the first one was a defining moment where I decided to co-found HuggyStudio with Fabian, and we didn't know each other really well. So we had to basically work together on defining the values and the culture that we want to have in order to start a company together, right? So that was a defining moment. We can deep dive into it later on. And then there was another moment where we were kind of financially successful, I would say, but it didn't make us a better company. It was just like this sense of that number was a number I had in mind years ago. I dreamt of, becoming that entrepreneur that hits this target or this milestone, and then we just hit it, and it was okay. That's not special, actually. What is really special is working with those people, having those set of values, and having that feeling of we're doing something special. We're part of something bigger than ourselves, and that's the thing that I didn't have at the bank, right? So the bank, like everybody, just wanted to hit those numbers. Yeah, it was just about that, and every year they would either hit or don't hit the numbers. But once they hit it, well, they get the bonus, and next week they start again with a number that is a bit higher, right? Yeah. And it never stopped. And this is kind of another moment at HuggyStudio where we're super proud about that, looking back. And I would say another last one basically is what we're going through now, which is, funny enough, not a fun situation. It's a difficult period right now where we are basically restructuring the company, where we're thinking about how to position ourselves, because we did some mistakes in the past, like lost some revenue streams. And this is also a defining moment where we have those people around, and we're just like super pumped about recreating something that people need, people want, and focusing on that impact. So those are like the different moments. I'm not quite sure I answered the exact event you had in mind, but that's...
Yeah, you kind of touched those points already. So we had co-founder moment. We have realization of purpose is more important basically than pay at the end of the day. Yeah. And then number 3, how do we navigate through challenging situations?
Exactly. And you touched on pay. Just want to make it very clear, like at this point of time, it was clear to everyone within the company they would earn much more in another company. And I told them, you're here because you want to be here. You want to work on that purpose with us. And the day you want to prioritize your life around a higher pay, then we'll help you find that elsewhere, right? But that's not something that we're hiding. People really are very aware of the fact that they're not getting, the best salary ever, but they're here for a reason, which is the purpose.
Which is quite typical for startups too, right?
It is. But some also hope for the big payday, right? Because some people want, like, there are so many motivations, and I would not say that a motivation is better than the other, but some motivations are, I want to have this startup name on my LinkedIn because this startup is hot. Or I would like to have equity in this startup because a friend got equity in their startup at Uber, I don't know where, and got super rich. So I want to have the same strategy. Yeah. And like, those are different aspects, good or bad motivations, I don't know, but it works out, right? Yeah. And from our perspective, I think the real motivation here is to have impact on helping other non-technical entrepreneurs getting out there. Yeah. At least that's what I feel, but maybe there's a hidden motivation. I don't know.
Well, I think it depends on the person as well. But what you just said is what I'm seeing too. Can be very, very different. But at the same time, what I see is that the importance of purpose is becoming more and more essential to many. Also in regards of what's going on with the world, right? With sustainability and all these kind of things. I feel there is a shift coming from, hey, I want to found a company for an exit, which makes me rich, or I want to build something that really has an impact on the world and myself. So I think especially then it's super important to have company culture in the picture as well, right? Because and then there's another thing I remember we talked about when we were kind of diving into culture talk, and we're going to talk about that later, but where we're discussing, can you actually build a bad culture? Like, when we talk about our company culture, it always kind of triggers this picture of everybody's happy, having a good time, everybody likes each other. But then we were diving deeper into it. So what's your take on that? Can you just go in there a little bit? Because
definitely, I think whether you want it or not, you are shaping a culture. You can be aware or unaware of that, but whatever you're doing right now, you're shaping the company culture of your company, right? And I remember we had that discussion because we were discussing about, should Culture Talk help companies create a good culture? And I was like, no, it should just help companies create a stronger culture, whatever culture you may have right now, right? And as an example, if you keep on promoting someone who keeps on getting, better and better results, but this person is a toxic team player, then you're defining a culture. Whether or not you have values on the wall or not, So definitely it's possible to actively create culture I personally don't want to be part of, but I won't call it a bad culture, because for some people it might be great. As an example, I don't want to work in specific companies right now that are super driven by the mindset of you need to work hard, long hours, weekend if necessary. I don't want to do that anymore. I did that in the past. It didn't work out for me. Now I have a child. I have a different mindset. And my feeling now is, if you want to work on something that is great on the long run, you need to love what you're doing today. You need to have fun, and it needs to be healthy. Because if it's not healthy, you will maybe last two years, 1 year. Like, that's the reason why many of those consulting firms have those very short or high turnover. And that's not something we want to do. We really want to have people writing down their hours, compensating for their long hours, and taking their holidays. There's no unlimited holidays policy, because at the end of the day, you don't know if people are really like taking those holidays or not. We have those very strict guidelines on making sure that people actually relax and find the time to get it. So that's the culture I want to be part of, but it's not a good culture for everybody. Some people right now want to deep dive into a product, not talk to anyone, and just work on super specific challenges for hours and hours and hours. We're not part of that culture anymore. So we want people to come for a reason, which is the impact, and people who want to work with other people in a very healthy environment. Now the question is, will we be a better company? I don't know. It's a bet, right? Will we survive? I don't know. It's a bet, but I want to be part of that culture right now. And some other people will want to be part of that culture at a company that are super extreme, working very hard, long hours. Do you actively link back your culture to your business objectives? Good question. I think, you might be familiar with the idea that we went to 4-day week, like a bit less than 2 years ago. And when we decided to reduce to 4 days, it was like one of the most stressful period of my life, because we had the same goals. We had the same number of meetings, but we only had 4 days instead of 5. So all the meetings we had on Friday went to Monday to Thursday. So less time actually to work on those goals, but the goals stayed the same. So for 3 months, we were just like running like crazy together. But we created those 4-day policy to actually have this calmness within the company, and it was the opposite. It was counterproductive. Exactly. So that was like, oh. And what happened was, suddenly there was a shift that happened in our mindset, which was, it's impossible to keep the same pace. It's impossible. So we need to think differently. So we focused way more on what we want to create. The other thing we did was less meetings. We now have like 1 meeting every 2 weeks. And back then we had dailies, weeklies, and so on. And what we also did was, let's think about the structure, because we want to keep the same goals, but we need to change the structure in order to reach those goals. So what we did was create a structure where it's less dependent on the time we would invest, meaning work more with freelancers, automate more of the processes, make it a bit more self-service than it used to be. And then our revenues jumped above like what we initially planned, even at 100%. So that happened as well, right?
Yeah.
So it's not like we're adjusting our goals to the culture. It's more like we are changing our mindset based on our priorities. Yeah. And the first priority is to have a healthy culture where people will not burn out, and where people will be happy to stay here for 10 years, right? And based on that, we'll need to have the mindset that makes it possible to reach ambitious goals.
Yeah.
And I think that's a nice bet.
That's actually very beautiful, because you started with what's important to you, and you knew you didn't want to be in the hustle culture anymore. So you said, let's do 4 days instead of 5. But then everything had kind of grown into that hustle thing already, with fully packed 5 days meetings, what you just said. And then you came to the realization that, okay, I want this 4-day week, but the organization needs to change too. So you had to do this process or this transformation of, okay, I didn't pay attention to not landing in a hustle culture. Now I want to proactively go away from that. And now I have to actively rebuild, which oftentimes takes much more effort and costs you a lot more. But then in the end, you kind of reach your happy ending with, wow, it really translates into our business results. So that's really that kind of transformation then. Exactly.
But we're not in a happy ending anymore.
Yeah, of course. It never ends, right?
Exactly.
It's an ever ongoing thing.
Exactly. And things change again, right? And I had that funny thought experiment, which was, we did so many things in regards to our business, but also to our culture. What if HuggyStudio would, cease to exist in the next 6 months? Then I guess from the outside perspective, people would say it's because of the culture. It was not hard enough. Yeah,
dedicated.
Exactly. Yeah, people were not like, really? Work. Exactly. It was not hardcore enough, right? And if I succeed, or if we succeed as a company, then it's because of the culture, right? So that's quite fun. We tend to put culture as the sole aspect to the success and failure, while culture is actually the priority, like you said before. Like, it's what you want to have, and then the rest must follow, right? Whether your culture is the one you want to have or not, first you need to be aware of what is the game you're into, and then make the adjustments in order to get to your goals to survive, right? Yeah. And that's a new thing that we're going through again right now as a company, which is quite fun, but also stressful sometimes.
Yeah, you have to reflect over and over again. Yeah, it's an ever-moving thing. It's a living system. Culture is always there. And you said it earlier in the beginning of our conversation that if you do nothing, you already do something too. So that's what happens quite often, I think, that startups founders, they don't really pay attention to it as much, because they feel like everybody's happy, so it's going to work out. Yeah. Or, and then like you just told us, they reach this point where they feel like, I'm not happy anymore. I need to change something. But it's not like really starting out on this kind of strategic, intentional level. Would you say, looking back, that if you had known how central culture is to everything, you would have started out differently?
Not at HuggyStudio. I think we were very deliberate on our culture at HuggyStudio. And even people who leave HuggyStudio, like one of the main, positive aspect they keep in mind was the culture and how they felt during those times at HuggyStudio. And that's the impact you want to have, right? Yeah. But when looking back at different companies where I was, wow, I would have appreciated culture more, or I would have like adjusted culture a bit more, right? Because funny enough, there were companies where the culture felt horrible, but the outcome was great, right? It was because it was no match with me.
Right.
But the company went great.
Yeah.
Then there were other companies where the culture was said to be great, but the outcome was not there, right? What I really learned is it needs to be a match between exactly the culture and the system you have in place, right?
Yes.
And sometimes it happens implicitly because founders think they don't have no culture, but they do the things that need to be done in order to reinforce their culture, right? But this cannot last forever. If they're gone for like 4 weeks, things start to change, right? Because they thought that it was in the system, it was implicit, but they were actually doing it themselves. And then you also have the opposite, where companies actually have this culture, but they're promoting the different behaviors. They're promoting something that they should not promote. And then at the end of the day, they have like a culture clash. Great people leave. They don't understand why. And this is something that I experienced like across different companies. And I'm speaking about startups and young companies, not corporate. And if I just may add to that, I've been living in Berlin for a year, and then I wanted to build my company in San Francisco. So I decided to move to San Francisco. It only lasts 3 months, right? And then I came back. But during those 3 months, I met employees from Airbnb, from Facebook back then, from all those different startups. And what impressed me so much about, especially the employees from Airbnb, was their dedication to the company and the company values and their purpose, right? And when I came back from those discussions where, I had like my roommate was from Airbnb and he was working on the algorithm to create the pricing algorithm for the people who were renting out flats, right? And I was like, what you working on? And he was like, so there's this thing that if I manage to find a solution, people will earn so much more and it will change drastically the revenue and by default also like how they will perceive Airbnb and how they will live their lives, right? And it was like we talked like half an hour and he was like, listen, I need to go back because I need to work on that thing. It was like maybe 9 p.m, right? And he went back to his room and just worked on that. I'm not promoting that aspect of working hard, but if you have people who are so passionate about their work and they like what they're doing and they don't feel like I have to do those hours because otherwise my boss is going to kill me, then you do have people who work a bit more, who think a bit more about the business. And when I came back to Switzerland, I was shocked because then I met people from other companies in Switzerland. I'm going to name drop. And feel free to beep that out afterwards. And they were just like, yeah, Friday is a remote day. So, I'm just going to play PlayStation. And I was like, what? Okay, have fun. Good luck with that in the next couple of years.
Yeah, that reminds me of the importance of impact. But it always sounds so far away. Impact, what does that mean? It's like this construct of what I'm doing has impact. But what you just said, it showed it very beautifully how somebody can see the connection between I type in code here today and then in a couple of weeks, whatever, somebody else will be able to live a better life. That is impact, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
So that takes me back to another thing that's super important with company culture is the communication of it. And I remember you said you had this pinned to the wall and then you felt like it's not alive and living. And that's exactly the thing, right? And then when you said your organization had to adapt, I think that is when it comes alive, right?
Exactly.
Was that your moment?
Exactly. So that's a moment of the company, but also of like all the people I interviewed on this podcast. So I interviewed like 20 founders about company culture, and what they all have in common, and that goes back also to those events that you just mentioned, is that realization that who you are is important to know, but then like how to reinforce that is the second step, right? And we had that moment. We had that moment where we had values. We spent an entire weekend with Fabian, my co-founder, like talking about values in the company culture and making sure that this is going to be like the company that we're proud of and that we're going to be working until, we retire. And then we share those values with the employees who were joining the company, and we're like, those are the values and this is the purpose. And people will be excited, right? They're like, yeah, that's definitely what I stand for and let's go for it, right? And months pass by and suddenly there are small misalignments and people start forgetting the values. And I realized, okay, that's not enough. We cannot just show those values once a year. We need to reintegrate that into the company, like into the core things that we do. So the first idea we had was to create a value discussion. So once per week as a team, I would bring up a fun question. Like the question would be, for example, if, our company was a superhero, which one would it be and why? Of course, based on the values, because it's a value discussion, right? And then people would say, yeah, Batman because of that and so on. And then we would bring another discussion like every week. And at some point we thought to ourselves, okay, this is nice because people listen to the values or hear the values every week. People think about it, but then something funny happened, which is people shared personal views and personal stories that people didn't hear before. And that was something that they really liked. Yeah. So they wanted to keep that to get to better know the other people in the room. And at some point we started to think, what if we would offer that as a product to other companies? Because that's becoming something very valuable for ours. And that's where CultureTalk.io was born.
Yeah, that's a super interesting story. How is Culture Talk being perceived on the market?
Yeah, so we started with CultureTalk.io. So basically, in one sentence, CultureTalk.io is a tool. You just get there as a manager or as a CEO and connect with your company using Google or Microsoft, and then we would automatically schedule a culture talk between 4 to 5 employees within the company based on their calendar availability, right? And then in this meeting, they just join a culture talk that is moderated on our platform to talk about specific value or the purpose of the company. I realize it's more than a sentence, but the idea is out there. So we thought it would be a no-brainer at first. Yeah. So we built it and we're like, let's go out there. People will buy it. People will go crazy about it. And that didn't happen. So we actually didn't build it like I just mentioned. What we did is we went out there, we talked to 25 companies and we said, would that be something that you actually have problems with? The idea was not shaped yet. It was not like, this is the product, would you like it? Do you have a problem with aligning people behind values and purpose? And the feedback was like, yeah, we need to do that more. Yeah, exactly. That's really difficult. And at one point I had a meeting with a very successful company in Fribourg. They're like 60 employees, raised 36 million. So they were about, to grow very fast. And the CEO was sitting there and he was like, listen, right now we need to fix that and I need help. So whatever you might offer, it would be great for us. And I was like, okay, so can you commit that you would use my product if I build something that fixes your needs, right? And he was like, yeah, I'll pay that amount. And that gave us the sense of, okay, let's build something together with them. And we built a product together with them that solved their issue. And then we went out there and people started noticing that actually the biggest value of CultureTalk.io was not just values and purpose. It was about connecting employees together, breaking down silos basically, and helping them align behind a common sense of purpose, a sense of belonging, and this idea of, I'm not building a wall, I'm building a cathedral. That story, right? Of how two people might perceive a job differently. That's what Culture Talk is about. It's about connecting those employees to a bigger sense of belonging and purpose. So right now we have approx a bit less than 200 employees on the platform from 4 different companies. So we're still at the very start, right? And what we see is that employees love talking to people outside of the teams about topics that are broader than just like a project, which is something that we didn't see at first, but they really like that. And companies see that in a way that, again, 2 aspects: increasing employee sense of belonging, meaning also indirectly happiness. And the second point is increasing the alignment. Yeah. So indirectly also productivity, team collaboration, and so on. Yeah.
So what you're saying is basically the culture is not unidirectional. Like I write down a statement, a manifest, whatever, and then I translate it into some kind of messaging. And then I keep hammering that messaging onto people. But it's more about being very multi-dimensional, like connecting everybody, reinforcing it within, people's conversations, and making it more alive in that sense, right?
Definitely.
Yeah.
And giving employees a voice. Because
I love that.
And that's an aspect that employees really appreciate because they feel valued. They get in the call, they don't know who will join this call, right? And then suddenly the CEO sits there. And the CEO asks this person, okay, what would you change about that value? That's a feeling of being valued, being heard. And that's super important so that this exchange actually exists. I'll give you another example. That's a stupid one. But within our company, we had one value. The value was called lead by example. So
the typical one.
The entire company's mantra is to be the best possible co-founder. We want to help people, and it doesn't have to be about, building a business. But if you think about it, the best way to help someone is to be honest, to be direct, to help them get into the place they want to get, and also to have skin in the game. So being the best possible co-founder is a mantra that embodies all of that, right? And we thought about, okay, what does it mean to be the best possible co-founder? And we had different points. And the last one of them was lead by example. And we thought it was pretty clear, right? If you want people to be punctual, then you need to, start on time. You need to be there, right? And at some point through those value discussions, someone said, listen, I'm not quite sure how I should feel about that because I'm not in a leading position.
Oh.
Right?
Yeah.
And in this talk with Fabian, we were like, oh no. That value, we never talked about it, but it's perceived totally wrong. It's not for leadership. It's everyone can lead by example in just doing the right thing. So the only thing we did is we changed the word. We went for inspire by example. Yeah. Right? And then suddenly everybody felt concerned.
And they were like, that's what I can do. Yeah.
No, it's a stupid example, but that's exactly one of the benefits of just involving people into your culture discussions.
Yeah. Yeah. You can really unveil these kind of things that are potentially holding people back, right?
Exactly. And that's a small one, but there are also bigger ones, right?
Yeah.
Where people say, in this startup that is using Culture Talk, there was a bigger discussion around a topic that they have very much in their soul. And that discussion triggered something within the entire company, right? And they've been talking about that ever since, and coming to a better situation. But they had to have this stage where people could express their thoughts without fearing any backlash.
Yeah, and then can create those ripple effects. So when a startup, a company is at this point where they feel like, hey, Danny has been saying so many super important things, but where do I start? What would be your number 1 or 2 tips for them?
So I'll do a small parallel because I'm a father now. And I got a tip from another father who was like, the most important thing is don't wear a mask. Don't wear a mask. Be yourself. Because the problems arise when your child doesn't understand you anymore. And if you wear a mask, you will not be the same person, right? So if you just stick to who you are first, right? So it comes first. Understand who you truly are as a person, as a founder, because it's very often it starts with the founding team, right?
Yeah.
So understand truly who you are, right? And then based on that, the values are here to reinforce the best part of your personality, not to create a totally different person. Right now, if you would tell me as one of my values is to be super competitive and, those things that I would mention that I don't like to have anymore in my life, that wouldn't work. Yeah. So first, try to understand who you are. And the best way to understand who you are is by asking others, right? Don't ask hey, who am I? But ask things like, if you would have to give me, 3 adjectives, which ones would it be? If you would see me as, as an animal, whatever, which one would it be? Why? Yeah. And those kind of things. There's a question I'll ask maybe that I created for an interview, and it was really nice. And I kept that question. I asked all my friends is imagine you live in your city. Let's say it's Zurich or Berlin, whatever. And in this city, there are only people who are actually you, right? So there are children, there are older people, there are men, women, but they're all you, right? And then I ask them 2 questions. The first question is, describe me that city. How are the vibes? What are people excited about? What what works well, what doesn't, right? And then here you have actually your personality. And very often it's hard to trick.
Yeah,
right?
it is. Yeah.
And then you explain your city, you paint your city, right? And the next question would be like, okay, you're a city. Tell me one reason why your city might go bankrupt, when your city might really have huge issues down the road, right? And then you find actually some aspects that may be considered as weakness, right?
Yeah.
And what is very funny is like weakness and strength is like the same coin, right? But two different sides.
Right.
So you can also use that to better understand like what makes you strong. But it's way easier to ask that than to ask, what is your strengths? What is your weakness, right?
Absolutely.
Exactly. And once you know who you are, it's about getting those values to reinforce those best parts of who you are. And then the next one is to make sure that you can reinforce that. And that will help you understand who you should hire, who you should fire, and how you should actually promote behaviors or demote some behaviors within your company. So those are like the 3 steps. Understand who you are, define the values that will help you be this better person based on your personality, and then understand how to promote and demote behaviors based on that.
Because that's another thing, that culture is not values, but it's more what you do, how you do it. It's the rituals, the heroes, it's what it's called, like what you said earlier, who do you promote or not? And then the symbols, how you build your organization. So yes, it translates really into everything.
Absolutely.
And another thing that I was just thinking where you were talking was being yourself or not being yourself. In that regard, if you're trying to play a role for too long, it's not only not credible, but it will also burn you out. Yeah. Right?
Definitely.
So that's a trap that you're
and that's valid for everything.
Yeah.
That's not only about startup and being a founder, it's about who you are. And some people might be unhappy in a job and they think like, what's wrong with me? It's just like who you are is not made for where you are, you know?
Yeah.
I have some friends who are still at the bank and they're super happy.
Yeah, or the big consultancy firms where you kind of expect people to leave after 2 years, where they start as a junior role and they want to get this hustle flow and this brand on their CV, and then they're ready to leave. They just take, what they can get and then they go. But on the other hand, there are people who stay for a long time. Yeah. But it's kind of a given, that people are accepting and then they just roll with it. So, yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. So many different people. And that's like one of my biggest learning. We're all profoundly different. Yeah. And I never thought that, but we are. And that's a hard learning because your spouse is also very different. your friends are also very different. Your colleagues are also very different. So
your founder peers are very different.
Exactly.
So copy paste just doesn't work, right?
Exactly.
What I liked about the question with the cities was the second one, where you kind of also come to realize what are the traits of somebody I might need to bring on as a co-founder, for example, to be complementary to what I bring or do not bring, so that I see, where I need somebody else to bring that kind of quality into the team, right?
Exactly. Yeah. And that's like the city of Fabian and my city. They're like, it's so funny how complementary they are. It's just
like puzzle pieces.
Yeah, it's just a joke. Yeah, it's a joke. And we got kind of lucky because of that. And there's this sense of, because I know my city might go bankrupt because it lacks of maybe organization, structure and discipline. Then, I value way more his city, right? And his city, with his own words, might go bankrupt because some people may not think big enough or may not take, the risks to, change things as drastically as it should. And then at the same time, his city is super organized, well structured, and everything works great, right? And my city, like, people are pumped and super excited, and like a lot of music going on. I guess in his city as well. And but at the same time, nobody really wants to have a job. Everybody wants to start a business, right? So so how do you go from there, right?
Yeah. Wow, that was super, super valuable. Is there anything as a closing statement where you feel like if there's one thing left to say about building your company culture or keeping it alive, what would that be?
Yeah. So again, whether you like it or not, whether you are aware of that or not, you are shaping your culture every day. Small decisions, small messages you write on Slack, small messages you don't write on Slack, the things that you actually express, people you promote, people you don't promote, those are all part of your culture, right? So this is happening anyway. So my point would be intentional about it. Be intentional about your culture. Know who you are, define set of values who help you be a stronger version of yourself, and actually be intentional about promoting those aspects of your company culture. Be intentional.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much. This hour was packed.
Yeah.
And I appreciate that you were here.
It was great talking to you. Thanks so much. Great initiative.
You too.
Talk to you soon. Bye.
Bye. And if you want to learn more about Daniel and HuggyStudio or Culture Talk or the People Kickstarter and myself and how we could work together, we will put our links down below. Check them out. Visit our pages, visit our LinkedIn profiles, send us an email or a DM, whatever works best for you. And we'll be looking forward to getting to know you. If you like this video, give it a like, share it, send it to someone who might find it helpful too. Thank you so much, and we hope to see you soon at People and Culture Stories. Take care.